I pull up, I look across the street, and there's already a couple of SUVs sitting over there, and I walk around, and I see the AR-15s laying against the back of the car. I said, this is about to be Texas.
Welcome to the second season of Patched. Thank you to all our viewers from season 1. We truly appreciate it. We've got a great season coming up, and we hope you enjoy it. All of our guests help us take a look at the personal impact of life in outlaw motorcycle clubs. In this episode, my co-host Justin Mooch Delaroto and I sit down with Tiny, former member of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club.
You don't see jealousy, you can't feel it. It's not, you might get a little feeling of it every now and then because somebody's acting weird, but it's solid. It's told behind your back. It's hidden from you. And I had no idea how powerful that was until I got voted out.
That's this episode of Patched.
Are you an active member? The kind that would be missed? Or are you just content that your name is on the list? Do you attend the meetings and mingle with the flock? Or do you just stay at home and criticize and knock? Do you take an active part to help the club along? Or are you satisfied to just belong? Do you push the cause along and make things really thick? Or leave the work to just a few and talk about the clique? Think this over, brother. You know right from wrong. Are you an active member? Or do you just belong?
Hey everybody, welcome back to Season 2. What's up, Jason?
Hey, good to see you, Mooch, man. We're excited for Season 2 to come out, and we're especially excited for all of our viewers out there. We appreciate the support.
After last season, we got a really good letter, so I guess we're going to check that out.
Yeah, this letter came to us from one of the top 4 motorcycle clubs in North America, just FYI.
Let's check it out.
Dear Jason, I used to hate you, despised your very existence. I'd spit on your beliefs, let the adrenaline surge at the thought of mutual combat, like a rerun on late-night cable TV. Why, you ask? Do you know me? No. Do I know you? Absolutely not. But I was bred to hate you, just like you were bred to hate me. All because of the patch we wear, or wore. Still, somewhere in the back of my mind, a small part of me held on to the thought that maybe, just maybe, the men who wear these patches might have something in common, or could find something in common. But the death toll, the history, it convinced me I was wrong. Until I watched your podcast. I paid attention to how you talk, your mannerisms, the reflection in your voice when you spoke about your children or about Mooch, and all I saw was sincerity, integrity, loyalty, the same qualities that drive me as a man, a brother, a father, the same love for motorcycles, for family, and for brotherhood. And deep down, I pray for peace one day. No more death, no more incarceration. I don't hate you anymore. I don't despise you or yours. And if we ever share a room one day, I won't be preparing for war. Jason, I respect you. I believe in what you're doing and in what you're trying to build. Thank you for being a voice for those of us who might not be ready to speak yet. Sincerely, active father, active brother, active 1%er.
I'll get started since that was directed at me, but that deeply moves me. I'll just tell you that. I know when Mooch and I started out doing this podcast, our initial thoughts were to help brothers with their mental struggles. Whether they're still in a club or, they're recently out of a club, we're looking to help brothers. And we know that there's a lot of support from people in our communities that know that there's brothers that are going through hard times and struggles. Even in the motorcycle club and definitely when they get out. So our initial goal was for that. But to get some of these responses we've had over this last year from guys who have been watching the podcast, and to get a letter like this, I mean, it truly lets us know that we're onto something here, that this is, I would say, something that's needed. It's something to look at, and it's something that's I just feel is just there's a lot of opportunity here. So I hope everybody can listen to that letter and really think about what we have going on right now and where this could go. So Oh, I also wanted to say that I just think it was very well written. I mean, so that just goes again to show that we're not all your typical bikers. So that's my opinion. Mooch, go ahead and give your thoughts on that too.
Yeah, wow, what a really meaningful letter. That one really hits me because this is something that, we weren't really sure of our direction starting out. We kind of had some different ideas. And, I think one of the main themes that we came across doing this season one was that common bond that we all share between clubs and, peeling the patch back and showing how much we all have in common. And so to have others resonate on that and reflect on that and really see where we're coming from, it really means a lot. It really makes me feel good. I'm really excited and happy to hear that. So whoever wrote that, thank you so much.
This is why we came back for season 2.
Yeah, one of the things I really enjoyed about season 2 is, when we started off with this, we were really looking at kind of the mental health effects of club life, the underlying issues, and also, how different patch members have things in common. But what I really got excited about with all these great guests we had this season was that we really started to target and look at what these guys did post-club life, what it was like to get back into the real world. And after dedicating half of your life or a majority of your adult life to something, and then finding a new focus or new shift. And I think we really nailed down on that this season, and I'm really excited to hear what everybody thinks of it.
So this season we reached out to advertisers and we are selling merchandise. And why is that? Because we are going to grow this show to reach a new audience, to create stronger topics to discuss, try to get more people in the same room. To our number one goal this next season is to do a table on the round discussion with guys from multiple motorcycle clubs across the United States. So just so you know, like why we're going to start having commercials and advertisers and why we're going to be selling merchandise, it's all to make this show better and to reach more people.
Yeah, our whole goal is to get this out to as many people as we can. And that takes a little bit of money. So that's why we have advertisers and are doing some fundraising. And potentially, hopefully, we can get me and Jason in the same room for some more episodes and get some new guests. So anything you guys contribute goes straight to the show.
We appreciate all the support you guys can give. Thank you.
All right, guys. The first guest we had this season was Tiny, a former Hells Angel.
Tiny was recommended to me by a brother of mine in the club, and that recommendation is gold. Tiny's a great member from the southern states. Opened up a charter in Tennessee. Great family man, hard worker. Can't have anything but good things to say about him.
Yeah, a lot of our viewers last season were wanting kind of more diverse crowd, so we were looking for more one percenters or more club guys from across the country. So we're really happy to get someone out there from South Carolina. He helped do Tennessee, and he said the club helped him become a better man and helped him accomplish a lot of his goals in life. So he had a lot of achievements within the club. So we're really excited to have him on, and I hope you guys like this episode. Check it out.
With us today, a special guest, Tiny from the Hells Angels. Tiny, can you just go ahead and kind of give us a little brief background on like what got you into motorcycles, what kind of bike you ride, what's your favorite time to ride that bike, or just things that like led you into becoming that guy that fascinated about motorcycles?
Well, like any recipe that you would have, there's multiple ingredients. I had a really cool uncle, and my father bought a KZ 750 off of him when I was 14 years old. So I would sneak whenever, hey, man, I'm Gen X. I was a latchkey kid. So everybody was gone when I got home from school. So I just started riding that motorcycle and learning how to ride. And I kept going for a long time. And my dad tried to ride it one day, and he fell over in a church parking lot. And he asked me, "Do you think you can ride this thing home?" And I said, "I don't know. I'll try." So I jumped on the bike, I took off, and he's like, "Man, you're just a natural at that." I said, yeah. Well, years later, he admitted to me that I knew you'd been riding that bike because it was the only thing in that garage that didn't have any dust on it. But I mean, I had been put into sports, church. I had been in some type of fraternity or organization my entire life. RAs, Boy Scouts, all the way to Eagle Scout. In high school, it was wrestling, it was football, it was constantly around a group of guys being part of a team. When I got old enough, of course, I went to college. I even played a little football at Clemson. And while I was there, I needed some extra money. So I started bouncing at a strip club, met a bunch of bikers, thought they were the coolest people in the world. The more I hung out with them, the more I had in common with them. And they gave me that fraternity. They gave me that brotherhood. They taught me how not to leave anybody behind. And I bought my first Harley Davidson. It was a FLT shovelhead 5-speed, what we call road glides today. Mm-hmm. It was, that's what it was. And as a matter of fact, that's what I have now is a 2019 road glide, which is shark nose and all of that, which was, in 1981, it wasn't that cool. I had it in 1991. That's where it started. And living in South Carolina, you ride back and forth to Myrtle Beach, you ride back and forth to Hot Springs and Cherokee, and then you start venturing a little further out, start going to Daytona. Never really got into Wares Beach or Laconia or anything like that until much later, after I'd started, getting into the patch scene. But always just had that group of guys and being around guys. So when I started meeting patched bikers, that was kind of the it for me, because you see a group of guys that rode together, that were very tight, that communicated with each other. If you messed with one guy at the bar, you messed with him. But if you messed with these guys, you were messing with all of them. And it was just that same power that you had when you went on a football field, or that same power you had when you went camping with a group of guys. So that just kind of got me into it, had me prepared for it. And I just wanted to do that and wanted to be that. So I decided I was going to prospect.
You got into motorcycles at an early age. How many have you had over the years, and what was your favorite?
Wow. I don't keep a count. I haven't counted, but there's been a lot of them, from shovel heads to Sportsters to hot rods. I've got a 75 shovel head sitting out there in the garage now that I rebuilt from the frame up. And I've got the 2019 Road Glide to South. I guess that would have to be my favorite because, I spent so much time on it. One of the guys that really brought me up in the biker world, not so much the club world, but just the biker world, his name was Danger Dan. He was an A-Bait member, if you know what that is. It's kind of, and he taught me a lot about, working on my own motorcycles and things of that nature. Well, he died. He had a lightning strike, and it shortened his life. And his widow sold me his motorcycle, and I actually rode that bike for a long time in the club, and I sold it to a friend of mine just to kind of keep it in the family, and that was basically an electric glide. I guess it would have been about a 05. So that was my most sentimental motorcycle.
Being a bigger guy, do you find certain models fit you better than others? Because I'm sure there's, a lot of us really like riding FXRs and stuff. I feel like you're probably pretty big for an FXR.
Yeah.
When I first started hanging around Hells Angels, the Hells Angels from Charleston, some of those guys are bigger than me, and all of them rode FXRs. And I'm talking the old school FXR, not these Dynas today, the Evo FXR,
That's what I have now.
and watching these guys, for the first time at Myrtle Beach, I was on a balcony. It was bike week, and they had gone out riding around. They were coming back. We were standing on the balcony, and these guys were splitting lanes in oncoming traffic on the back wheel of these FXRs. And I was like, man, I got to do that. I got to learn how to do it. I thought all Hells Angels rode like that. I didn't know it wasn't but about 10 of them.
Yeah.
So
that's honestly I was in a different club, but that was always the perception, especially in my early era. But it was, the Angels rode FXRs. They rode them hard, and they were wheeling. And I think one of the first Hells Angels I saw was at the Harley Drags in Vegas, and he rode by on a road glide, and he wheelied on the road glide. So I definitely got that perception too. I think that's what, that was an image they did very good at building for a long time.
Oh, I learned how to do that on my road glide. We were at a funeral in Fayetteville not too long ago. Well, it's been about 2.5 years ago now. Then the paparazzi, everybody's out there with their telephoto lenses and everything else. And I did the prettiest wheelie I've ever done in my life, right through all of them as we were leaving to go to put this brother to rest. And it was learning how to do those wheelies, and then you just learn how to do them on bigger and bigger bikes. Is absolutely a challenge. Luckily, I've never dropped one doing a wheelie. But
I was going to say that. That's why I've never gotten that into it, because I would be the guy that when the cameras were out, that's when I wouldn't fall off the bike in front of everybody.
Yeah, you've got a good one when you can see the sun for quite a while, and then you finally bring it back down. But I did get home and found a crack in my lower leg, so.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that'll happen. That's these guys are out there stunting and they're doing these cool rolling burnouts. I would say that the Harley stunt scene has gone crazy in the last few years, right? I mean, we're seeing guys doing really gnarly stuff, but I always wonder what their maintenance bill is, because guys like us that ride all the time, how much tires cost alone, and these guys are burning through tires and rotors and wheeling all the time, and I hope they have some good sponsors, because they're ripping through that stuff.
Yeah, those bikes are not made for touching back down after being up like that, especially slamming.
Especially a road
so,
glide.
Especially a road glide. So you got to bring it down gentle. We've all seen it, and we love watching it. But, yeah, I'm with you, Mooch. I don't want to think about how much it costs to have your frame welded, because it just split.
Right.
But let's get into some of the good topics that we like to talk about with our guests. Tiny, many brothers have issues balancing club life and the life outside of the club. Can you tell us how you did that, throughout the time that you spent in the motorcycle club and in the Hells Angels in particular?
I spent a lot of time knowing how to be a man first, a biker second, a brother third, and then a patch member. I was brought up to believe the man makes the patch. You've heard that?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
The patch doesn't make the man.
Yeah.
It was a true fraternity and brotherhood to me, so I treated it as such. And it made me better. Learning, prospecting taught me the disciplines that I needed to go on to some great things in my life. I went back and finished my college degree. I found the love of my life and had a beautiful child. Many great things happened to me after the drug scene and after, all of the gang scene and the thug scene and all of these things that you go through as a man getting to a 1% club. I didn't have to meet all of those things for the first time when I got there. And I was very lucky in that. Mm-hmm. When you see some guy come in and hang around and prospect that's never lived through any of that, he's got to get through that first. He's going to have a hard time.
Oh yeah.
You don't know if it's going to derail him at any point in time. And I think that's a lot of the reason why 10 prospects for a solid club that's doing things correctly, out of 10 prospects, you might get one member, because a lot of guys just haven't had the experience that I had before I got there. And then when I got there, I had some great mentors. I had guys that when we would get back from a run, hey, call me when you get home. Hey, how's your mom doing? Hey, how's your kids doing? How's your bench press look? Have you gotten any faster with that knife pull? Whatever. It was always concerning each other. And the group I had was, do what you say what you do, mean it. You figure out what's the truth and you stand up for that truth and be willing to fight for it. And those are things that you have to have as a solid base of reality when you're in a club, because there's so much mystery, there's so much unknown, there's so many things that can affect you, from testosterone to the alpha male syndrome to the pack mentality. All of these processes that go through people's minds that have never experienced them before is really hard. So I had a lot of those lessons already learned when I got there. So I knew what traps not to fall in. Now, leadership at a higher level, that was a new thing for me. Power was a new thing for me. I never experienced any power outside of my own. But once you become an officer and you gain all this rank, and then all of a sudden people are asking you life questions. Like, you're supposed to tell them what to do. And I always just gave people the tools and gave them the knowledge and let them make up their own decisions in their own minds for themselves. So, I saw a lot of people going to jail in other clubs, a lot like, you can name off several other clubs that have been in trouble for their pyramid type scheme, where one guy tells 2, they tell 4, 4 tells 10. Well, in a court system, it doesn't work too good, because everybody points their finger at somebody else and say, hey, he told me to do this.
Yeah. We've talked about that, but to go back to a couple of those things you touched upon, like you had that basis, you had your own self-structure to know that you weren't going to fall for the peer pressures that come from just all of a sudden just showing up to the club one day and saying, like, I'm here and what do I need to do, right? Because we saw it so many times. Mooch, myself, you, Tiny, you see guys that think they have to be this person that they're not to try to impress somebody. And then what happens with that young person, or even those older guys that come around the club and they never were around this lifestyle? They don't know that they can be themselves. They think they have to jump into a clique or the way this
playing
group,
a role, right?
Playing a role, right?
At that point.
I told so many guys, just be yourself, and you don't have to go to that back room, or you don't have to go to that party and expect that you're going to be this guy who gets this I party all night patch. If that's not you, then don't do that, because you do have to function the next day, and these guys overlooked all that stuff and how they are in their normal life to try to be this person that they thought everyone else wanted to see them.
Having to pay your own mortgage will balance a lot of it.
Yes, exactly.
If you have,
I think
you
confidence.
have to be somewhere.
Confidence goes a long way, and confidence isn't something that you could just teach a prospect, right? Like that security, and like you said, be yourself. We can tell people to be themselves all the time, but you have to be confident in who you are as a man to be able to be yourself, right? And I think, Tiny, you made a very good point that, I brought it up before, but there's two different types of members typically. There's the one that came out of something, whether we were in street gangs or military or, whatever. We had life experience before the club that already shaped us who the men we were, right? We knew how to move in different circles. We knew what respect was like, and, how to talk to another man and set boundaries. And then there's the whole other guys that come in that don't have that experience, and they put on that patch, and those are the ones that are playing the role, right? They don't know. So you're right, Jason. Those are the ones that get peer pressured into going to the back, or those are the guys that, can't balance club life because they don't even know what they're doing with their own life yet. But I think that's a very good distinction, because a lot of us learned, respect and how to treat others before we joined the club. And I think bringing that into helped us become better and more successful members versus learning it while we were there. And I think also, something that people get confused on is a lot of times if you came from gang life or, any sort of stuff like street life, joining the club for me, and it sounds like to you, Tiny, a lot of other people, it actually kept me out of trouble for the fact that I had to answer to other people. I was responsible for other people. So I couldn't just go out and pop off and hit a guy in the bar wearing a patch because I know what it was going to affect everybody else. Instead of like, hey, put that patch on and I'm going out being a tough guy, which we see a lot of people do. But those of us that came from something often went the other route. Did you see that in those circles as well?
I did, and I watched older clubs, be rated, get their windows and doors kicked in. I watched the club I was joining, the charter I was joining. I knew its history, how it had gone from road jammers to Hell's Angels, and I watched how the police operated. And I knew you can't just go do whatever you want to. In gang life or in street life or in the drug world, you're just wide open and you don't care. You don't have to care. But when you get in a club, you've got 1,000 cameras on you, man. You got somebody watching you all the time, and you got a target right on your back that says, hey, come look at me.
Right.
So, yep. The responsibility that comes with that, for people that are listening at home that have never been in a club, that are people that love what we're doing here, you have no idea what it's like to have that on your back until you're like really have it on and you really are walking in it for a while. It's like, yeah, at first it seems so cool, but you're going to eventually figure out really quick that it's a target. You have to live up to it. There's a ton of responsibility despite the rules in the club. Forget about the rules in the club. That's just what you have to deal with when you're hanging around with your brothers. But when you're in public, there's a whole nother set of rules. And if you don't know how to act, like you said, Tiny, like be that man that came to the club that already has an understanding for respecting people and, you give what you get, that type of mentality. It's just a recipe for disaster. And that's what we see a lot.
And I emphasized also with some of my guys, I told them, I said, listen, when somebody meets you, they're meeting me.
Absolutely. That's solid.
When you're out here riding around with that patch on and you meet somebody that needs help and you don't help them, or you bully somebody or you punk somebody, it might as well have been me doing it, because the next time that person and anybody they've talked to sees me, they're going to think I'm you.
Yep.
Yes.
That's the responsibility that comes with it. If someone meets a Hell's Angel for the first time and that guy's a dick, all they know is Hell's Angels are dicks. It doesn't matter if you were or not. And any club, obviously, but that goes. And then, on the law enforcement narrative, everyone, they're always pushing this organized crime, drug dealing stuff. But as we all know, you wear that patch, you have a spotlight on you. And what I always tell people is, hey, man, if you're trying to be a drug dealer, the last thing you should do is join a club, because you're wearing a patch that says, hey, look at me, and here's where I'm going. And I think that's another big piece, too, is there's an image that people think, and there's also an image we have to uphold. And that's the balance when it comes to the patch.
And we've talked about this a lot with guys in the club, that, like, some guys will join the club to further their criminal empire, right? They think that by putting on that patch, by getting the respect of the people in the community or their small circle, they went from street thug to now they're in with the big boys, right? But I don't know very many examples of where it works.
No, it doesn't.
So it's like,
I mean, you were probably bigger before you got there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And if you continued when you got there, you were the sucker that got caught first.
yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're not living long without getting caught doing that lifestyle for sure.
No.
So, Tiny, another parallel I really like I know we don't know each other personally, but I'm a mental health therapist and I work with teenagers on parole probation. And one of the biggest things we try and get the parents to put these youths in is what we call pro-social activities, so sports or groups or clubs, because we see, how much positives can come from that. And it sounds like you spent a lot of your time playing sports and, growing up. So how do you feel that kind of helped shape you into the man you became and even as a member?
So my parents learned early on that if I have any free time, I'm going to do bad things with it. So they kept me very busy, very active. I constantly had somewhere I had to be and had to go. I had Boy Scouts on Monday night. I was back at Church Ferraris on Wednesdays. I was bowling on Saturdays. I was going to campouts with the Scouts one weekend of the month. I was always going somewhere to be with somebody to do something greater than me, greater than myself, be part of a bigger community my entire life. So being in the club, whatever you decide to sacrifice for, okay, what did you guys were reading or thinking or looking at on your phones as soon as you woke up, where did your thoughts go and what did you sacrifice for to be where you're at today? That's your religion. That is your religion. If you're paying tithes to it and you're praying for it, that is your religion. It doesn't matter if it's drugs, if it's alcohol, if it's this podcast, if it's your bike club, whatever it is. So you're right, Mooch. You have to focus people's mentality and what they're dreaming about and what they're praying for and what they're hoping and wishing tomorrow is going to bring. It needs to be focused on something greater than themselves, because if it's not, it's going to end up a problem.
Yeah, and I think team sports are, a very important way to learn that lesson. But also, you mentioned wrestling, and I grew up as an avid wrestler as well. And for me, I'd always say, there's the team aspect of wrestling, right? There's the team points. If you win, it helps the team. But if you lose, I can't blame the quarterback. If something happens, I can't say, oh, the coach didn't put me in. Like, all that responsibility is on me. And I had to learn that, if you want to get good at it, you have to put in the work. And the guys that are getting better are probably putting in more work. And so how did that kind of translate the stuff you learned in sports? How do you think that affected who you are as a Hells Angel?
There's always somebody stronger and always somebody better. And the only thing you can do is improve your own technique and your own self.
In a team sport, it's just like being in a charter, right? So you've got 12 guys on a team, you got 12 guys in the charter. Now, every single person on that team has their own personality and their own strengths and weaknesses. I think that when you're in team sports as a younger person, you're learning how to adapt to people's different strengths and weaknesses and their different personalities.
And
if
their
you don't
roles, right?
And their roles. And it's like, if you don't have that structure for yourself as a young person, and then you jump into, you think that you're just going to jump into something. And then most people, I would almost say, don't say, I'm just going to go join a motorcycle club if I've never done anything that's been around a group of people or had some structure to it, because I think it would be almost like too foreign to try to tackle. So it'd be kind of interesting to know if there were that many people that never did a team sport or never were a part of an organization before they joined a motorcycle club, if that's even the truth, because all of us on this podcast and every single guest we've had has all had those same similar background traits to their life before they got into motorcycle clubs. So whether it's they got into the military and figured that out before they came into the club, or they were in team sports, or they had a group of friends and they had to learn all their little discrepancies and how to deal with all those people. No one just came solo their entire life and then joined a motorcycle club, because I think it would be just too overwhelming.
I think we all got to the club for selfish reasons, okay? We all wanted it for ourselves. I wanted that patch for myself. But at some point, you have to make that transition, okay? Yeah. So you're a student, you're in the hall of the schoolhouse on a Friday, varsity plays Friday night. You see all the guys walking around school with their jerseys on. Yeah, they're all the same team. They're all the same color, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing with the motorcycle club.
It's a feeling.
So you want to join the team to get that respect and that admiration and to be part of that group as well. But at some point, you've got to learn what your job is and how to help your teammates. Mm-hmm. And then you learn their strengths, like you said, and really you learn your weaknesses and you learn where you need to improve. And as long as you don't try to hide that or lie about that, and you try to improve that, you're going to be okay.
You mentioned a lot of traits that, like, when you're a good member, or like you said, from prospecting to membership, being on time, being a brother, a lot of those things. What kind of things did you learn in club life that you took with you once you left the club? Like, the things that help shape you be a better person or a better man or more reliable. What are those things that you learn from club life?
So a lot of people, as soon as somebody says, hey, we need a roof on the building, I never had the problem of doing this. I was always very respectful and mindful of what my resources were. But you have a lot of people that immediately want to throw their hand up and say, hey, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. And eventually they can't do any of it. But yet you see that a lot in other places in life. And you learn to say, okay, we've got to figure out how to get this done, even though this man claimed he could do it. You learn really fast how to get it done, regardless of who throws their hand up first. But it's a trait that you learn in life that you carry with you later on. And you do demand that in the club. You can demand things of men in the club that you can't demand in real life or in other parts of life. Okay, to be on time, to not mess with another man's wife or motorcycle. That has repercussions in the club world. Out there in Walmart, it's just not the same.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah.
So even though you did learn the discipline and you expected other people to raise themselves to that level before you gave them a patch, and once you gave them a patch, you expected that of them, that does not translate well. So you have to find ways around that mentality.
I find little things like, especially in leadership, we held our members to a certain level of standards. And now that I'm out, I'm riding with, just random friends or whatever. There's little things I noticed that I learned in club life that other people don't pick up on, right? And that we only notice. But like, Jason, we've talked about before how we're always on time. Like you're never late for anything. You've mentioned like checking in when you get home. Hey, I made it home, brother. I'm safe. All those types of things. And some of the big ones for me is like, hey, you want to go ride Sunday? And someone says yes, and then Sunday morning, oh yeah, so I'm not going to make it. That was in club life. Hey, if you said you're going, man. It don't matter what comes up or what happens. And if you're not sure, you say, I'm not sure. I'll let you know first thing Sunday morning, but I have this going on. But I think those are things that I learned in club life that it helped me be a better person. But sometimes I have those expectations for others and realize that they didn't get taught the same thing, And that's kind of what I was getting at with that question.
And that's a learning lesson for like all of us, right? Because like you said, Mooch, like now that we're out of the club, Tiny, now that we're out of the club, it's like you can't hold every single person to the standard that we had when we were in the club. And it's like that's a learning, that's your own self of evolution, right? Because it's hard when people tell you like, yes, we'll get together for that, and then the day of they're canceling. You're like, hey man, I set aside all my time to make sure that I'm there. Why can't you do it, right? And we know in the club, if you do that, then there's repercussions for that, right? Especially if you do it a few times. It's not going to go so well.
And you get people calling you back. If somebody texts or call you, I mean, you got used to, hey, if I called the guy at the tire shop, he knew he had to call me back.
Absolutely.
If I needed a roof put on and I called a roofer, he knew he better be there on time.
Yep.
And then you get out of club life, and the guy at the tire shop, he don't care if he calls you back or not.
Exactly.
Right.
It's a little hard to adjust to, I'll tell you that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, those expectations, and this is probably the first time like we've openly spoken about it now that we've talked about it more, but those expectations, because we had them of our members, we had them of ourselves, obviously, and then you get tight with a group of guys or coworkers or whatever, and we instantly just put those expectations on them too, and we're kind of setting ourselves up for failure in a way that's those are not unrealistic expectations, but like I've told people in couples counseling, it's unspoken expectations, right? Like,
yes.
If you're in your head think, when I come home, my wife better have the dishes done, but you never told her that was your expectation. You come home and they're not done. Now you're mad at her, and it's this whole fictional thing because I had expectations, but she was unaware of them, right? And I think that's a big common thing in those circles too.
And I learned a lot from people that wanted to do everything. They would succeed at it for a while, but then they would complain and say, oh, well, the grass didn't get cut.
Yeah.
Well, you've always cut the grass and never asked anybody else to do it, so people just expect you to do it. Don't be upset that you didn't delegate anything.
We talk about that all the time, brother. Like, it's the doers and then the guys who are watching the guys do, right? And it's because, like you said, those doers are always raising their hand. They're always saying, I'll take this on. I'll go to this place. I'll make sure that this gets done, right? And so before you know it, out of that group of 12, those 3 guys that are always saying they're going to do something, those 9 guys are sitting there saying, I mean, I'm going to wait for some direction here because like these three guys are the ones that are going to jump in, and they're more than likely they're going to tell us to get out of the way. So you do put yourself in to these positions, and you have to understand that it's like it's a group effort, and you need those other 9 guys, and they're very valuable. It's like you can't do it alone, and you definitely can't do it with just 3 guys to run a charter or run a motorcycle club. So
now you're talking about the sports thing, the organized sports. So a good coach watches his players. This is what I carried from sports into the motorcycle world and into leadership was watch people's talents. You start becoming a talent expert at what your people around you are good at, and what they like to do, and you know where to put them. But the fallacy is once you've out of the club, and now like at the position I'm in my professional career, I'm not the president of the company, and I watch some decisions, and I just have to shake my head. Hey, the leader's not always right, but he's always the leader. I have to walk off.
Yeah.
Yep, it's different. It's just different.
So when you were in leadership, how did you manage the different personalities, or like you said, the strengths and needs, or strengths and weaknesses of other members? How did you organize that and manage that to like keep everyone cohesive and moving forward?
Spend time with your brothers. That's something a lot of people fail to do. Spend time with the guy. It's not just when he was a prospect and you had him come and helping you work on your bike, but actually go hang out with him, find out what he likes to do. He might be a maintenance tech in his career, but in real life, he hates working on stuff.
Oh, I know that guy. I think I know that guy.
Yeah. Don't assume that he wants to do that when he comes to the clubhouse. Okay, so spend time with him. I had a philosophy that if 2 brothers had an issue, they should get on their motorcycles. They could ride 100 miles, pull over in the median, and talk about it. Then ride 100 miles back home. If that didn't fix it, you got to get help to fix it.
I love that.
That's a great advice.
One of the things that drew me to the Mongols was that they have a rule that brothers weren't allowed to fight brothers, because the concept was there's nothing in the world two men can't sit down and talk about or talk through. And I mean, we all know there's caveats to that, but I really like that mindset because, we've all talked about this before, Jason, that shared time on the road, that experience of being next to your brother, depending on the guy next to you, and then sitting down and having, a very vulnerable conversation. I'm showing someone my weakness or telling them my feelings and sharing that, and then getting back on the bike and riding home. I think, that's super powerful. You're showing another side to this person, and you're also showing you depend and count on this person. So I think that goes a long way. That's really cool.
That's a huge thing that you guys would do in your club, because I'll tell you right now, Tiny and I will tell you that is not the way that it was in our club.
We weren't supposed to use weapons on each other. That was the limit.
Yeah, that's a limit.
It was a $5 fine for fighting in the clubhouse. Okay. So if you walked in and you had a problem with somebody, you strip your rings off, you throw your $5 down, you get down. So we learned that there's supposed to be an allowance for a violent conversation. And what I mean by that is I ran into some brothers they made all their decisions with their heart, not with their head. And I forget which famous person said it because I wasn't smart enough to come up with my own, but action is the enemy of thought. So these guys were all action, not a lot of thought. So a man like that truly believed in his head something that wasn't true, sometimes the only conversation you could have was physical violence. But when you got done was the important thing. Okay, did you go run around and politic to everybody about what a jerk that guy was? Or did you get it out of your system? Did you use it to bring you two tighter? Mm-hmm. So I was known for, if you ever went outside with me and we had to actually fight over a topic, if we got done and came back in and drank a beer, that was it. I would never vote that guy out, and he would never vote me out. So you was going to have to find another way to get your politics if you had a problem.
The problem I saw growing up with that, because I came from a gang that we solved our stuff with violence too, and with the same concept, right? We go outside, no weapons involved, duke it out, share a beer together. And I think on surface level, I think that's a good concept. But there's a lot of inherent things come with it that, you guys lived it, so right? But there's maybe the one guy that's a really good fighter, super tough guy, and he can't explain himself with words. So he's the guy that votes the wrong way, and it doesn't matter what you say, now you guys have to fight because that's what he knows. That's how he imposes his will, or that's how he imposes his vote. But what I also saw is really important was no matter how close people are, a lot of people carry resentment. They'll share that beer with you. They'll give you a hug and they'll say, yeah, we're good, brother. But when it comes down to a vote down the road or something, oh, you know what? Tiny stepped on me on the way up. Oh, yeah, it was supposed to be a fair fight, but he hit me when I wasn't looking. Or, one of those things that people do in their heads to justify what's going on. And it carries resentment for a long time. And it's not a shield, right? The patch isn't a shield. And even though the Mongols had a rule we couldn't fight each other, I couldn't walk up to a Mongol and call him a bitch. You know what I mean? If I did that, I'm getting punched in the face. So man rules still apply. But, I see both sides of that coin, and I think it's an argument that I've had, not an argument, but a discussion I've had with a lot of people about the pros and cons. But I think the hard part about is old school people can go there, step outside, handle their business, but the newer generation has a harder time. I think it's fewer and far between people that can deal with it, and I think it's just gotten out of control. So even if it started as like a manly thing, I think it's gotten pretty far out of control.
Exactly.
The real man part of it.
Those feelings get harbored, right? And they come back up later because it's hard for guys to say, I didn't win that fight, right? Mentally, that's a whole nother struggle you have to deal with, right? And no one's patting you on the back and saying, hey, brother, you stood your ground, and at least you didn't.
You lost really well.
Yeah, you lost really well. So no one's picking you up to say that. Everyone's always cheering on the victor. So if you're not the victor, it's hard, and you feel like somewhere inside of you, like you have to make that up later on, right? So those little innocent fights that you think should be squashed, really just, it's a very rare thing that it got squashed and never came back up to bite that member in the ass.
Right, not being confident. And if you lose a fight, a confident, secure person can lose a fight, and we can shake hands. But so many other people have to justify it. Now they're the victim. This other guy was a bad guy, and that's where it starts harder.
How do I make myself look that much better? Because this is all about, it's your image. You walk into a...
And how do you look to yourself, right? This guy doesn't want to go to bed every night, know that everyone in the chapter's beating him up all the time, right?
Which then leads into more alcohol, more drugs, and further down the rabbit hole if they can't deal with it mentally.
Well, the old school fights that I was involved in, I never had a problem with the way those guys voted, and they never had a problem with the way I voted. Years later, in the club, out of the club, we still talk to each other. We still go to each other's houses. We still fix each other's flat tires. And these are guys that, we've scrapped it out. I had more of a problem with the newer guys that wouldn't fight, that voted because they were scared they were going to lose their patch. They weren't voting on right and wrong. Mm-hmm. They were voting on, hey, I was nothing before I got this patch. Now I got this patch and I'm something. I'm more afraid of going back to nothing than I am voting for the right thing to do.
No, and that's a very true statement, and it's very tough. Like, I see where they're coming from, because it's the one thing that they covet so much. And they don't want to get wrapped up into it, because, you get wrapped up into that. Next thing you know, you're standing alone trying to fight for what you think is right, and no one's backing you up. So it's a trickle effect. It's a trickle-down effect, right? So one thing happens, and then, 8 people get swiped right up into it. And so, yeah, it's a tough thing, and until we can get where people feel confident enough that whether they lose a fight or not, like I always say, you made it to the club. You're in one of the biggest clubs in North America. You are that guy, whether you're, a Mongol, a Bandito, a Outlaw, a Hell's Angel, a Vago, a Devil's Disciple, any of these big clubs, you've made it. There are people everywhere looking and saying, you're doing the one thing that I wish I could attempt.
But Jason, that's the difference, is that insecurity piece that we were talking about, or these guys that are playing a role, they don't understand that. So like what Tiny's saying, if you're putting the club first, or right and wrong, you're just a man of morals and values, you're going to stick to your right or wrong. That's being a grown man, and you're secure in your beliefs. The youngster that his only goal is to keep his patch is because that patch makes him who he is. Yes. That's his whole identity. So he'll go against his morals and values. He'll keep his mouth shut when the brother needs something, because he doesn't want to rock the boat, because what's more important to him isn't the better of the club, it's not the betterment of the chapter, it's him holding on to that patch, because that's his identity. And I think that's what I've started to see more in the newer generation.
Yeah, and hopefully they can find a way out of that.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Mooch. A lot of you have been asking where to get an autographed copy of my book, and the only place you're going to be able to get it is here at the automotoentertainment.com website. The link's down below. We'll have paperback and hardback, so click the link, check it out, and get your signed copy today.
That's great, Mooch. A lot of people have been asking me about that. It's a great read, and you guys got to check it out. Patch merchandise is available at automotoentertainment.com. Tiny, during your time in Tennessee, You worked on some complicated situations trying to keep peace between two clubs. How did your club brothers deal with that? And also, how did you get through those times?
Well, that story has a backstory.
All right,
And
we're here to hear it.
The backstory starts in Texas between the Banditos and a local club that got into a fight at a Twin Peaks.
The Cossacks.
And the local police officers felt like it was okay to shoot everybody in the parking lot and to lock everybody up and to ruin people's lives, ruin careers. It was almost like some local guy around here shooting a deer and throwing him on the hood and riding around town with him. That was the same mentality I felt like was coming out of that situation. That's my personal feelings. I was always that front line brother. I was always the brother that, hey, if there was a problem with another club, I was the first one in every single time. And when I got asked to be part of a group of men that were trying to negotiate with the Outlaws Motorcycle Club, I said, why are you guys asking me? Why would you want me to go from being, a warrior to being a peacemaker? And they voted me to do the job. Listen, it doesn't matter what my opinion is when I walk into a table, whether it's my table at my house, my table at the clubhouse, or the state meeting. If the vote goes against what I think, I still go with what the vote was. I just had the respect of feeling like the group had a smarter mind than my own. So that's what I went with. So I got a contact. I went to a meeting and I received a local contact for an outlaw in my area to speak with whenever there was an issue. We weren't supposed to be buddies. We weren't supposed to be friends. We weren't supposed to hang out together. Only if there was an issue were we supposed to communicate. Well, there was a bar where outlaws had been going to that I didn't know of in South Carolina. They'd been going in and out, and they were headed there. And I already had 2 charters of Hells Angels prospects and supporters going there too. And I knew from the Texas experience that this was going to be a problem. So I tried to make phone calls, and I called the outlaw and I told him, I said, listen, man, you got a group of guys going. He said, man, yeah, they go there every Thursday night. They know the owner. They, the people who are there know what they like to eat before they even set down the order. I was like, well, this is going to be a problem because we've got Hells Angels and prospects and support club members already there that I can't get on the phone. Luckily, he called the outlaws, got them on the phone and stopped them. They weren't happy about it, but they stopped. They didn't go to this bar. Since I couldn't get anybody on the phone, I personally drove 2 hours to go to this bar to see what I could do. I pull up, I look across the street, and there's already a couple of SUVs sitting over there, and I walk around, and I see the AR-15s laying against the back of the car. I said, this is about to be Texas. I walked back across the street. I went inside. I started rounding my guys up, saying, listen, y'all got to get out of here. Oh, well, I'm going to finish my beer first. I said, bro, I'm telling you, it's different in the Hells Angels than it is in any other club. It has to be a negotiation. It has to be, I'm presenting you with the evidence and I'm expecting you to make the right decision, but I'm letting you know you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. I can't just go in there, no matter what my position or title is, and tell Hells Angels what they're going to do. Okay? So I had to handle this thing carefully. And I walk in, I start talking to guys. Man, but I got pictures of these guys. Do you not know what kind of charge that is to be somewhere with pictures of another club? Their members' pictures in your hand, and if something went down,
it's premeditated.
You know,
it's not a good one.
It's all bad. It's
not a good one.
And it would have just justified, in my personal feelings, again, I don't have any proof of this, but I feel like other police officers that do gang task force stuff were jealous of the cops in Texas that got to finally pull the trigger. Okay? Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But that was just a feeling I had. So based on that feeling, I was like, I got to get my guys out of harm's way. Luckily, the outlaw was able to get his guys out of harm's way. Anyway, we both felt like that we had done a good thing. The outlaw and I bonded over that moment, and we realized, hey, if we don't lie to each other, if we don't bullshit each other, if we don't try to politic each other, if we just tell each other the damn truth, we're after the same thing. That's the safety and the growth of both of our clubs. So with that, we built a relationship. And we went from looking at each other's facial expressions when we were talking to see if they were lying about how many miles it was to a meeting, to now we actually trust each other's judgment. Whenever something would come up, we had solid proof before we even made a phone call. And we didn't sugarcoat anything. We laid it right out there. I didn't know till years later that Rusty Coons had the same type of relationship with some Mongols out in California. Different story. So anyway, this led into Tennessee. Been trying to push into Tennessee and Georgia since I've been in the club. Nobody's growing. Nobody's getting outside of their comfort zone. Nobody's going anywhere. Nobody's doing anything, especially the right way. We hear all the propaganda about the other clubs doing things the wrong way. We hear all the things about how they're just throwing patches on people, how they're selling their patches, how they're doing this wrong and they're doing that wrong. Okay, well, let's do it right. But at least we're doing something. We get off the couch, we get on our motorcycle, we go somewhere we've never been before. We show them our brand of brotherhood, and we see how many people are like us in that place. Well, I found a group of guys in Tennessee that started going back and forth. And there were some weaker areas for the Outlaws over there at the time, but we started negotiating back and forth about where we could put people and how they should act inside the community. Had Harley-Davidson dealerships lined up, glad to see us coming to those areas in Tennessee where there wasn't a solid motorcycle club presence that was doing good things. So slowly started doing that, but the whole time I stayed in the communications with the Outlaw that was my contact. He stayed in touch with me. We both made sacrifices. For him, he could just make a phone call and demand things, where I had to take things to an officers meeting and it had to be presented and then it had to be written up and then it had to be sent to a vote. And it was a long process for me to do anything, but he was able to do things a lot faster than I was. And we just worked off of each other. So we wound up having an actual Tennessee charter, not a bullet fired, not a drop of blood, not a single jail sentence, no federal indictment started, for the first time in history. It had never been done. Some people were not okay with that. Do you believe that?
Like it was too easy, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think, Jason, we've talked about before too, we spent a lot of time talking about, trying to get the clubs to get along, what worked, what didn't work, because I think all of us played a role to some extent of trying to, do negotiations with other clubs, speak with other clubs. And I think, you're bringing up a very good point as far as how the leadership works and the structure. And I think, it has a lot of pros in some ways, but when it comes to trying to coexist or have communication existence with other clubs, I think it's almost a detriment, because I remember when we had these ceasefire stand downs against the Angels in California, and, all it took for the Mongols was the president says, you see an Angel, walk away. If you don't, there's consequences. Well, you got to follow the rules. Like you said, whether I agree with it or not, rules are the rules. But then when it got presented to the Angels, they'd say, okay, well, we're going to vote on it. And then it would be, well, this chapter's cool with it, but this one isn't. And this area's cool and this isn't. And you know what? You know how club life works. Cool, we're cool here, but then I go to San Diego and a member gets touched. Well, now we're not cool anywhere again. And so, I think that leadership part is one of the reasons, one of the many, but one of the reasons that it's very difficult to get these clubs to start getting along and start talking more, because all it takes is one guy to say F this or F that, and even if it is a top-down structure, maybe doesn't care about the consequences or whatever, it takes one or two guys to ruin it for everybody. And without everybody on board, I think it's going to be very difficult moving forward.
And it's a political truth too. So what I mean by that is you have a personal truth that you believe, that was what was truly happening. In my mind, I was truly having a productive relationship with a member of the Outlaws that was benefiting the Hells Angels. Then you have a political truth. The political truth was this Hells Angel Tiny's getting along too good with the Outlaws. They're too buddy-buddy. He's having too good a time with them guys. Okay? So that was the political truth. Then you have the objective truth. Okay? The objective truth is true no matter what anybody thinks. But you know how long it takes to prove it? Way past the time that the political truth has already made a decision, right or wrong, and an action has been taken, before the objective truth ever has a chance to reveal itself. I was sacrificing my time, and if you've ever done it before, you get on an airplane, that's one threat to your life, just in that action alone. You go to a place you've never been, you're surrounded by enemies, you don't know if you're going to walk out of there dead or alive. Because when I started hanging out with Hell's Angels, the Hell's Angels were the type of men that you didn't worry if you were going to get beat up or not. You didn't know if you were going to go home or not.
Absolutely.
It was a whole different mentality than what these new guys have. Okay? Oh, I might get smacked. No, you might get stabbed in the world that I knew I was going into.
Yeah, in club life, if it escalates, it's a shooting or stabbing usually. It's not a fist fight.
You're constantly put in that situation. It's a sacrifice, and you sacrifice and sacrifice. And I think a lot of our members that go and do and put themselves in harm's way or stand up for themselves at these big meetings, and then you get home and a guy won't even go to the gas station and fill his bike up. You know, that's a bad example, but you know what you understand what I'm saying, how you've gone out here and really sacrificed and crossed lines and did a lot of learning and growing as a human being and a man, and you get home and we're still talking about who didn't sweep or mop the bar.
Yes.
You know,
going back to that, like what we were saying, you put yourself through a lot, right? You took on a lot of extra stuff, a lot of extra stress, a lot of extra, job in the club, taking time away from your family. So how did you balance that? And also, how did you deal with it internally, like while you were dealing with this stuff? Because you got to front, yourself to the club, and you got to front yourself to the Outlaw. Like, being up front with them is one thing, but you still got to present yourself as this larger than life person. But then at home, how did you balance all this stuff out?
I said that because I wanted Tennessee to work, and I knew what it was to be a man. And the Outlaw was the easy part. Trying to grow into Tennessee and getting guys to buy into what we were doing in our brand of brotherhood was the easy part. Okay, my Hell's Angels brothers made it hard.
Solid point, man.
Okay?
This one's hitting home with me, brother.
And I'm that guy that if you tell me, hey, I don't understand what Tiny's doing, I got a problem with what Tiny's doing, I'm not going to email you. I'm going to be knocking on the door and we're going to talk. Because I don't want there to be any misrepresentation or misunderstanding. I don't want you reading my words in your voice or your wife's voice or that cop's voice. I want you to read it in my voice. I want you to hear what I have to say. So when California couldn't really decide on what they wanted to do with Tennessee, and I heard some whispers here and there because you never get the full story, I told everybody involved, buy a plane ticket, we're flying out there. And we just showed up to a West Coast officers meeting. I said, hey, if you have questions, we're here. Please ask them in person.
I think what's so hard about that stuff, or at least it was for me, and because it seems like our situations were somewhat similar to the extent that it's very disheartening when you go out, like you said, you're risking so much stuff for the betterment of the club, right? You're trying to grow the club. It's positives. What do you get out of it? Nothing. You're spending all your time, your safety. You're a lot of times you're away from your family, maybe even away from work, all because of the goal of I'm trying to do what's best for the club. And here you are making headway with other clubs, maybe some new chapters. And like, I know for my example, very similar, but I was helping start chapters in new states. And some of the club thought it was cool, but there were so many guys that you would hear jealous or upset or talking. And they're the same guys that aren't putting in the work or not doing anything, but you're not. I mean, it's not that any of us need a pat on the back, but you're almost creating enemies where you're doing something positive. And I remember, I was getting really tight with the Outlaws, and the Mongols that were cool with the Pagans, well, yeah, Mooch is always with the Outlaws. And then when I was doing negotiations with the Pagans, the ones that are tight with the Outlaws, well, but these are supposed to be my own brothers. And, and I'm doing this thankless job to try and help better the club. And the amount of hate I received from my own membership was very disheartening. And I'm hearing a lot in your story, and it really resonated with me. That's why I wanted to put it out there.
Yeah, Mooch, I always used to say that I had one of the most unpopular positions in the club during the time I was there. I mean, and people I could sense it when I would go to a run, And like, as much as brothers love to see me, because I used to travel everywhere, ride my bike everywhere, and I had respect from charters for riding like long distances and through crazy conditions, there was still that element of the guys in certain cliques that were like, man, they didn't want anything to do with me, and I could tell, and it was hard because you're in this group, but the group's fragmented. from inside, and it's like you might be wearing the same patch, but yeah, you're over here and they're over there, and it's tough, and it was hard to deal with mentally, and you're doing the right thing, like you said, Tiny. Like a couple of phone calls and a couple of conversations kept guys from going to prison and kept guys from dying. And it's like when you see that can work. Like I used to be able to make a phone call to guys in Mooch's club and keep things from happening. It's like you're just like, how is no one else figuring this out?
Right.
It's not that difficult. Like to go through an area where you're not supposed to be by saying, hey, we're going to be riding through. That used to prevent so many problems just because they were aware that you were riding through. It didn't take anything more than a courtesy phone call.
The frustrating part too, Jason, is you always talk about the doers and the guys that are just standing around, and the ones that you catch the most from, the ones that have the most to say, are the ones that aren't doing anything. Like here I'm sitting in another club's clubhouse surrounded 20-1 trying to negotiate something so I can start a chapter in that area, and then there's some guy in Los Angeles talking about what I'm doing and hadn't got off his armchair,
Let's go back to like that whole thing, right? So you got to remember, we know that guys in the club, there's many levels of guys, and we can say doers and not doers and all that stuff. But then there's guys that all they have is that patch, right? And all they have is that meeting. And so when they're at their job, they're not in charge. When they're at home, they're not in charge. And they might have a shitty home life and a shitty work life. And when they get to the club, they can voice their opinion. And so that comes out. And it might not come out in the best way because people don't know how to correctly phrase their wording, right? Or how it's going to be perceived. It's really quick to throw a complaint. It's hard to talk about it. Look at what you're doing and give some positive reinforcement, because remember, if you say go f*** those guys, whether it's the cops or another motorcycle club, most people can chime in and say, yeah, f*** those cops. I got 3 tickets, pulling into this event. Or I know some brother that's in jail. Like, it's real easy to jump on that. But we all know we've ran into cops in every town across North America. There are good ones and there are bad ones. And there are good members of clubs and there are bad members of clubs, right? And so you just got to understand, it's like, it's not always that the member necessarily. It's just that what else are they dealing with that creates that situation where it's so easy for them to throw that negative comment at the person who's trying to do something positive.
Well, I drastically underestimated jealousy.
Jealousy is huge.
Jealousy.
Yeah.
And it's quiet. Jealousy's quiet. You don't see jealousy. You can't feel it. It's not, you might get a little feeling of it every now and then because somebody's acting weird, but it's silent. It's told behind your back. It's hidden from you. And it becomes a conspiracy, and then it gets traction. And I had no idea how powerful that was until I got voted out.
How did that feel, Tiny? I mean,
when that all came down.
Just the way that we've all been talking about this, and we did start too, like about how there's grown men that have their own feelings, they're confident, and then there's these jealous types that are playing a role. Yeah. But with all the work you put in, all the stuff you sacrificed, and to have it be jealous members, have it being your own club, feeling like they're turning against you, how did you take that after you'd sacrificed and given so much?
So the right way to do it in the Hells Angels is to just say, okay, I quit. And then do whatever you have to do to keep your head down for a year, and then come back and ask to prospect again and do your prospect time again and get your patch back. Okay? Sometimes they'll change your status to out bad after you've left on good terms just to keep you from coming back. I didn't do it the right way. Okay? I'm an emotional guy. All right? And first off, there's rules to being put out. There's supposed to be rules to being put out. Now, guys who are done what they're going to do in the club, we know guys who have left clubs on good standings. They got finished with all their business. They laid their patches down. They turned them in at a meeting, and they walked out the door. Okay? And they always ask us guys that got voted out, hey, why are you still haunting this thing? Why does this thing still bother you? Because it's unfinished business. Okay, you've got your whole plans and your life and all this energy you've put into this, and you're going somewhere with it, and all of a sudden it gets ripped away from you, taken away. And we had one man, one vote, 100% in, 100% out was the rule. One guy didn't show up. One guy refused to vote. One guy was on the phone saying, I'll never vote Tiny out. But yet, on my ride home, not even to my face.
You got a text like the rest of us?
On my ride home, I get told over the phone I'm not in the club anymore, right? I was told, hey, if you'll just give it up, we'll put you out as left. I said, listen, it took 10 real Hells Angels to put this vest on my back. It'll take 10 to come get it off. That's not the right answer when you're trying not to be put out in bad terms. That was the wrong answer.
It still goes back to being a man and standing on your own morals and values outside of right or wrong.
And it really does. And, I was also another part of another East Coast officer's position that was part of the out bad committee. If somebody was put out bad, I was to investigate and bring the findings to the East Coast and let the East Coast decide whether it was the right thing to do or not. Well, I knew from being part of that committee, you had to prove that a man lied, cheated, or stole, or called the cops. You had to prove it. You couldn't just say it.
I really like that there was that oversight, because most clubs don't have that or don't follow that.
Oh, it was new. That was new, and it didn't last long.
That's unfortunate, because I think all clubs should have that type of oversight.
That's a lot of work.
It is, but I'm the kind of guy that will stand up for what's evidence or what's right, and there's not a lot of guys like that. Okay, and when I needed somebody to stand up for me, he wasn't there. That dude did not exist. The jealousy existed. That was the reality of what was going on even 2 years after the fact.
Yeah.
Okay, so it felt horrible. Okay, on my way home, I'm thinking old school 1960s style takeovers. You saw the movie with the guy with the pistol and his, you can stay, you gotta go, you can stay, you gotta go.
I bet we all had those similar thoughts.
Those thoughts, went rampant through my head. And then, it took me a long time. I don't know that I've ever calmed down from it, obviously. But you learn to deal with it. You learn that, hey, oh my God, I have missed all this time with my family.
That's a big one.
I've wrecked other parts of my life because I was giving so much to this club that just a couple of jealous guys on a bad night decided I wasn't a Hell's Angel anymore. Now what do I do? Now where do I go?
Tiny, how long were you a Hell's Angel for?
Almost 14 years.
So this is I've been talking about funny or how parallel some of our stories are, and one of the things that Jason and I bring up a lot is how so many of us have so much in common underneath the patch. If you don't look at the name of the patch, but just what drives us to join motorcycle clubs, the type of men we are, and all that. And it's just always so crazy when you talk to someone else and our stories are so similar, and same thing. I was in for 14 years as well, so also helped the club grow. So I'm just kind of resonating a lot with your story. And one of the things I guess I want to know is, so after 14 years in the club, devoting so much time to it, and now it's gone, like instantly gone, because it happens fast, right? There's no smooth transition. What did you do to replace that with? So you said, you noticed that you had neglected the family, but what else came up where you're like, okay, here's what I'm going to do moving forward?
Man, and you, when it finally hits you, it's like a ton of bricks that after you've been in the club that long, you got a guy for everything, right? Yeah. You got a guy that can fix a broken glass. You got a guy for the roofing. You got a guy that can, do the landscaping. You got a guy that's got a fishing boat if you need to take
the yellow pages, the club yellow pages.
As soon as you're put out bad, you don't have anybody to do anything.
Even
so now I got to fix my lawnmower. I gotta sharpen my chainsaw blades. I gotta, this is how bad it was. I had a flat tire on my bike when I was going to visit somebody. I'm on the side of the road with a flat tire, and I have no idea who I'm going to call to come pick me up. That is a bad feeling.
Humbling moment, I bet, right?
And so you talk about what do you do? Well, you realize at that moment you've got to rebuild your entire social structure. Okay? You ain't got a guy anymore. You got yourself. And then you're going to have to go make some friends. You're going to have to get you some contacts. You're going to have to, or become independently wealthy or win the lottery, which I haven't done either one of those things yet. But you gotta rebuild every resource that you just sacrificed everything to have, because you've been scratching backs for the past 14 years, and they're not going to scratch your back now. Okay, they're not your friends anymore.
What about that sense of belonging? So, you grew up playing sports, you joined a club, and we kept talking about that sense of belonging. What did you replace that with, or have you?
Yeah, did you find a new group?
Man, I'm rolling around in it, okay? I'm rolling around in it. I went to Sons of Confederate Veterans because I've got 8 Confederate veterans in my family tree. And I was adopted from birth, met my blood family when I was 45 on my way back home from a USA run. That's another crazy story.
Yeah, that's a story on its own right there.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So, so I had, okay, so these might be some like-minded people, but, club life, and you get there and you meet this other group of men. The age differences are there. The thought processes are different there. The political structure is different. And you're just like, I believe in what you guys are about, because they clean, they're an historical group, right? So they take care of history. They clean tombstones and things of this nature. Anyway, all good stuff there. Then I've talked to some other veterans. I've talked to some other guys that were in bike clubs. I've thought about going back into some like A-Bake meetings because I've still got my motorcycles. I was a biker and a man before I ever got into clubs. So guess what? I'm still a biker.
Absolutely.
I'm still a man. I'm still a brother. That didn't change any of that. I might ride a little slower now, and I might not be in the
same.
Hey, real quick, Tiny. Yeah. Just you touched on something earlier that we were kind of talking about. We all agreed on. For anyone that's looking to join a motorcycle club, and I'm of the firm belief that I'm not going to steer anyone away from it. We all knew we had tunnel vision when we went in, and no one could talk us out of it, right? So getting that all aside, what you were just saying about make sure you have a balance of people in your life that aren't just in that motorcycle club world, because when it gets taken away or you leave it, all that stuff can stay with that. And so the big piece of advice I give people is look at the members of the charter you're going to get involved with, but also, now that you just said that, keep a solid balance of things in your life that are going to stay as, staples. Like you said, like people that could help you with your bike, like get a mechanic that's not just strapped to the club. Like, don't have every single aspect of your life be club oriented. Make it be
Absolutely.
Some separation, because there is no guarantee you're going to be in the club forever. Whether you leave on your own or it gets taken away from you, you need to make sure you have that.
I'm glad I treated people good on the way up.
Yes, yeah. and always treat people right, because you never know how it's going to work out.
That's what saved me was, I was very heavy into jiu-jitsu, and I felt, we traveled together, we competed together, and this was me as a grown adult. It wasn't that long ago. And so when I left the club, or the club left me, however I want to look at it, I still had a core group of guys that I considered my brothers that I could talk to. And, I still met up a couple days a week, and we would have, so I still kind of had that sense of belonging. I still had that brotherhood, but with a lot more positive aspects to it because it was a little healthier hobby. But I was fortunate enough to have that, and I know a lot of our listeners don't. And I think that's something we're always trying to pick up is if you don't have that, what's something somebody could do to not just crawl into a hole and say that, I just lost everything.
And there's nothing wrong with getting into something else while you're in the club as well. So you have that extra support. You have a different group of people. You have a different perspective of stuff because, I just think it's super healthy to have multiple things going on in your life so that if one falls out, the other one can take a front seat or, step up to the plate. So that's my advice to anyone that's listening is make sure you have multiple things going on in your life, and that way if something drops out, you're not left holding the bag.
What are you doing now, Tiny? We've touched on a little bit, but so you're still riding, obviously, because you're a biker, and that's what bikers do, right? Are you riding, like you have friends that you do like annual rides with or monthly rides?
Yeah, I've got some guys that, a couple of them have been in clubs. A couple of them have never been in clubs. But they were like local bikers, guys that's been around forever that, they'll tell you I was the same person. But, one of the guys I looked up to that was a Hell's Angel that I wanted to emulate, he was always the same person every time you met him. He was, he would talk to you like you were a normal human being and a man and respectful. And I always, treated people that way And that way, when I run back into them in life now, they know, hey, Tiny never did me wrong. So those type of guys still come around. We still got some fraternity and brotherhood there. But you know what? It's tough to navigate some of that because there's so much animosity. You're going to run into a lot of guys that are still angry, that are still mad, that, and you're going to run into some other guys that just don't care anymore.
Yeah.
I did absolutely run into a brother that's been gone for a couple of years. His status was out bad for a lot of years. Same situation. He lost everybody, all of his contacts. Then finally they did change his status back because they thought he was going to come back. But he'd already found something better. Okay? He found another fraternity, the oldest fraternity in the world, and became part of that whole system. And I'm considering that my own self. To get into something that's giving back to the community as a group of brothers who have a fraternity
Cool.
and can visit with each other without it having to be about something illegal. A lot of the problem with coming to the club is a lot of the clubs were based on old school illegal activity values. You didn't talk to anybody that was a cop or an ex-cop, or you couldn't have these guys around. Well, I had helped build some guys up. It was an established relationship when I got to Anderson, but a group of guys there, some of them had been ex-cops. They had a group of guys that wanted to be a club. And my suggestion was be a t-shirt club. So they did that for a while, but later on, they got voted to become a full pass club. I didn't vote for them, but my charter did, so I supported my charter's decision. In some of my leaving, one of the big issues that got brought up was Tiny has no problem with ex-cops being in clubs.
That's an easy one for people to throw around nowadays, huh?
It's always going to come back to bite you.
And I'm thinking, okay, are you moving so much dope that you've got to worry? That's an antiquated rule you guys have that you're living by. That you're protecting users, not businessmen anymore.
That's the same guy that's telling his old lady everything and all his strange friends at the bar that he meets all their business, but don't talk to cops.
Right, but don't talk to cops. So, I even brought that up, the jealousy thing, right? I walked into a charter one night and I explained, I said, let me tell you the names of everybody that's been to jail in your club, in this clubhouse. And I listed the names. I said, let me tell you the names of the people that put them in jail. Guess what? They came from the same house. It wasn't some ex-cop. It wasn't some support club. It wasn't some guy buying every hot dog you bake, buying every T-shirt you come out with. That guy didn't put your brother in jail. That guy didn't put, these letters you're writing to the Big House crew. That brother didn't get there because of an ex-cop in a support club. Okay? He got there because of the guy that was in the back room with him.
Yeah, usually another brother.
That's the guy that put him here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, that part of it.
One thing I've noticed about, because we were talking about out bad and status, is Jason and I've had a lot of ex-members on, and a lot of guys quit riding after the club, which I understand a lot of it, but, as an avid biker, I can't comprehend it. But what I have seen, though, is, and I was the same when I was in the club, too, I think, we all follow the rules, and if someone quit, I didn't talk to them because those were the rules. I understand that, and I know what comes with it. But I think some of the challenges that I'm seeing is those of us that are out bad, the club life wants you to just disappear. You're out bad. They don't want to see you anymore. They don't want to hear about you. And the last thing they want to hear is that you're out riding around on motorcycles with other people, showing up to events, or And I think that's one of the things that's hit me really hard recently is recognizing that it's not necessarily we ever had an issue with Mooch, but he's out bad and he should disappear. And now he's on podcasts. He's actively out riding his motorcycle. He's he's friends with Hell's Angels now. Like there's all this piece of the control piece, right? Out bad to them is I have the power over Tiny, and I don't want Tiny in my circle. I don't want people to mention his name. I want Tiny out of my life. And then they say, okay, well, Tiny's still doing all the same he was doing before, but now we don't have power and control. That sets him off. And I think that's one of those, there's first getting used to being out, and now there's these things that come with it, right? It's like we keep facing more and more challenges from getting put out, but also, to me, helped me recognize so much of how much happier I am outside of that life. And I don't regret being in the club at all. I loved that whole life, but I'm so happy with where I am now, too. And it takes that kind of outside perspective to see those things.
Look at the bullets we dodged.
Yeah. As we get older, we evolve, right? And so if you can't look back on your life and appreciate the things that you went through and then learn from them, I mean, you're not getting anywhere. So like everyone's got to take a step every 3 years, I think, and look back and say, did I do some good? Did I do some bad? Did I make more connections? Did I make a positive impact on somebody? Like, especially as we get to be these ages, right? And we were in clubs. Like I said, I'm not trying to deter anybody from becoming a member of a motorcycle club. I'm here to help. Like, if you need some advice or you want to know, like, hey, just ask me. Like, I'll tell you straight up, like, it's going to be fun and it's going to be a lot of disappointments. But guess what? If you want to do it, go for it. I'm not going to tell you not to do it. We all did it and we all learned some from it. We all grew from it.
If you can look at yourself and say, I'm happy with who I am as a person, patch, no patch, club, no club. If you're happy with who you are as a person, then you're learning and you're growing, right?
Absolutely.
Otherwise, what else are we doing for?
Exactly.
And Tom Kyer, I don't know if you know that name or not.
Tom Kyer?
Tom Kyer.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he's a Filipino knife fighting Kali expert. And
so you do Filipino stick and knife Kali or Eskrima Kali? I do Kali too.
We go through our martial arts and we train ourselves and we get better. He's got this philosophy. He says, okay, kill your clone. So every night at midnight, you have to fight who you were yesterday. And who wins decides who you're going to be tomorrow. So if you want to win at midnight fighting your clone, you have to have done something today to make yourself at least 1% better. So now I'm that 1%er. Now that's the 1%er I am. I just want to do something today to make myself 1% better. Depression is real. The emotions and the feelings of loss, the feelings of worthlessness, the feelings of wasted time, those things are very real. And you can't do anything about what's happened.
Nope.
And you can't do anything about what's around the curve because it's already there. What's around that curve is already there waiting for you, whether you're ready for it or not. So if you do something today, maybe lift a pound heavier, maybe get that arm bar a second quicker, maybe keep your palms down in that motion in Kali when you naturally want to turn your hand over. These are little things that you can do to make you enough better that where you kill your clone at midnight, tomorrow you're better than you were today. And if you stack enough of those up on top, I feel like you're going to get where you're wanting to go, not where this world's trying to drag you and take you. Okay? If you're part of your own plan and you're asking a higher power than you are for help, and you're trying to listen, so we're very spiritual people. Bikers are very spiritual people. We love to get on our motorcycles at the break of dawn at 100 miles an hour in a mountain and just live in that moment and pull over and take that deep breath of fresh air and be like, here I am. Here I am. What do you have to tell me? What do you have to say? I mean, give me a good thunderstorm to ride through, man. I've learned more about myself riding through a tornado on a motorcycle than I can studying every book in the library.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, adverse situations are our biggest teachers, man.
But you gotta, hey, did you go fix that? Put that new battery in that bike. Did you? We had that hurricane come through. Hurricane came through and devastated my part of the country. Okay, on its way to killing all those people in North Carolina, it went through my backyard.
Same.
And so every weekend, instead of being off on my motorcycle or being at some clubhouse or being on some airplane, I'm out there running a chainsaw. I'm out there rebuilding chicken coops and dog kennels. I'm trying to fix something every single step I'm taking and growing my own garden. I'm spending time growing my own garden, versus dumping a ton of energy into a patch.
Yeah. A good analogy is when you were in the club, you were growing somebody else's garden, and now you're doing your own.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I think that's a good takeaway for sure.
Tiny, where can people find you or reach you if they want to get a hold of you? Or are you up for that? If somebody wants to hit you up on Instagram or social media to say, hey, I got a question or I got advice, are you available for that?
Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, as long as they leave it up.
And
what's your handle on Instagram?
What's your handle on Instagram?
Just Travis Tiny Williams.
Travis
Just look
Tiny
up
Williams.
Travis Williams and look up Tiny. And I'm friends with both of you guys on Instagram. So, yeah, if anybody says, hey, I really would like to speak to that Tiny guy, you can send them straight to me right off of your friends list.
Perfect.
So I'm always up for a good conversation, man.
And just really quickly to wrap up, I like kind of going full circle. So you grew up sports, club, and then now I'm hearing you're dropping hints and stuff about other training. So are you still doing martial arts, still training? Are you weightlifting?
Yes.
Like what kind of hobbies do you still have?
So physical improvement in my training and everything else, because of the stress that I've put on myself from everything, it hit a wall. So I've had to back up and work on my mental health first and learn how to control some of my cortisol levels and things of that nature before I can go back into full-time training. I had a bike wreck that destroyed the side of my foot, and it broke some ribs and did some crazy stuff. So I haven't been able to train. I actually wound up punching the ground in that wreck.
Ooh.
So when I work on a heavy bag, I can't work on a heavy bag for so long before it's just, doctor says just rest it, right? So you rest, and then you think you're fine, and you go do it, and you think you're okay, and then you do too much.
Yeah.
So it's a never-ending cycle of training and lifting, especially now getting over 50. You got to hit it a little different way because you got to get up and go to work tomorrow.
Absolutely.
So,
Just staying active is the important piece, though, right?
every day.
You didn't just lay down and say the club's out of here and I don't know what to do and now I'm not doing nothing. But you staying positive and staying active, I think, is a really good takeaway. Easier said than done, right?
You have to.
It's great meeting you, Tiny.
Great meeting you guys, too, and I think we all got a lot of good out of our past. And
For sure.
there were some horrible moments, but you know what? We're still here. We're still moving forward. And, tomorrow's going to look good.
That's right. We're going to fight the guy at midnight.
That's it. Kill your clone, man.
Exactly. All right, brother. We appreciate your time today, and we hope to have you on again soon. This portion of the podcast is brought to you by First Bank.
Thanks, First Bank.
Thank you, Tiny, and thanks, Mooch. Remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons below and never miss an episode. Find us on Instagram at automoto.ent, at OG_Mooch, at Jason_Logan81. And for more info and episodes, go to automotoentertainment.com. And thank you for tuning in. See you on the next episode of Patched. Patch merchandise is available at automotoentertainment.com. The Patch podcast series is brought to you by Oak and Iron, Craft Cocktail Bar in Thousand Oaks, California. By Outdoor Creations, serving the Southern California and Nashville areas.